And welcome to another very special episode of The Breakdown, X's and O's. And we're not talking hugs and kisses, ladies and gentlemen, because today... Wait. Where's Nate? I must be mistaken, because usually on my right, I have a 5-year NFL veteran, but today, I'm not sure where Nate is. But I will say I'm not alone. I've come prepared because today I have a brand new member to the show, someone you've never seen before on The Breakdown, but he does have his own show on TDT Media. Let me introduce the new co-host for this week, Mr. Jackson Gross. Jackson, I'm very excited because we have never actually done a show together.
Yeah, no, I think the closest we came was we were down in Alabama for our Senior Bowl stuff. And that basically just turned into a screaming match between you and MJ about Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, you're right.
But I am beyond excited. I have a few chances to pop in here and there when you and Nate do your show, so I'm excited to be on and talk some football.
Well, usually I kind of start off with asking Nate how he's doing. And, we do it on all the shows. We kind of ask, talk a little bit about the day. So I want to ask you the same question. So what's up, Jackson? How you been? How's the day been? How's life been? Just give me a little rundown.
Life's been pretty good. Fairly busy. Did a lot of cleaning up of some the house today, just because I finally had a day off of work from Walgreens, so that was nice. So that's been good. Made, I would say, a very good dinner with my mom tonight. We got this like mafalda pasta. It basically looks like mini lasagna noodles. And she made some like Alfredo sauce and then she sauteed up some mushrooms and I steamed up some broccoli. We had that for dinner with some Parmesan cheese on top. So it was a very good hearty Italian dinner tonight here at the Gross household. But
it sounds nice and not gross. Not gross.
Hey. No, it was a very opposite of my last name. Very, very opposite last name. But no, things are good, man. Things are very good.
That's good to hear. I'm glad because we don't get to talk a lot. I know the last time we kind of talked was a Senior Bowl, like really, really close talking. But I'm glad to hear you're doing okay. I'm glad the summer's been pretty good for you, and that's all I'm trying to do is live the summer out and then go back to school, I guess. But you're already done with school, so I mean, what's your plans there?
I get to live the wonderful life of adulting and being on a budget and trying to pay off student loans. So enjoy the time in school while you can. I know trust me, it's a drag going through it, but you will miss it.
Well, that's good to hear. I haven't really done much of anything but work, so that's all. I'm just trying to get up some money and do me. But Nate and I don't spend a lot of time talking about ourselves. We spend probably the first 5 minutes or whatever, and we just jump right into it. So if you're ready, I'm ready. But it's not, it's not a little bit of a regular show. Usually we have Nate puns for the segments, but Nate's not here. So I don't know if you remember the Senior Bowl episode. Nate was not there either. So it's been 2 episodes Nate hasn't been here. So I'm doing my own segment naming, and for the first segment, instead of Nate's Necessary Notes, if y'all remember watching the Senior Bowl, it's the devastating news. Thank you. So, Jackson, I know you're pretty big in football, which is why I had to get you on the show. I wish I would have worn. Wait. Just give me a second. Hold up. I wish I would have. I still can. Give me 1 second.
Uh-oh. What do we have going on here?
Give me a second.
Things are happening. What is he doing? What's going on right now? Oh? Okay.
Oh, here we go. This is a little bit better.
Is that famous Jameis?
Now, Jackson, although he is not on our team anymore, I felt it was appropriate to wear this jersey because today we are about to.
Yes, it is a Jameis Winston.
We're gonna eat that W today. Oh my gosh, Jack, get out the comments.
I don't think he was a fan of the segment name. I think that's what he's booing.
Okay, perfect. As long as he's a fan of Jameis Winston,
how can you not?
I'm okay. I really do like Jameis Winston, though. I'm not gonna lie. He's been a great for the city. I hope he does very well in Cleveland. And let's get into it, Jackson. So we saw that last season there were several teams that had fired their head coach. I think that there were 7 NFL teams that had new head coaches. I would have to look it up. I should have been prepared. I didn't know I was going to talk about it. But the Falcons, Panthers, Rams, Commanders, right?
There are 8 teams with new head coaches this year.
Okay. What's the 5th one I'm looking for that we're not about to talk about?
So I'll just list them off real quick. So we got Antonio Pierce with the Raiders.
Okay.
Jim Harbaugh with the Chargers.
Yep.
Brian Callahan with the Titans. Gerard Mayo with the Patriots. And then, like you said, the Falcons with Raheem Morris. Carolina Panthers, Dave Canales. And then Mike McDonald with the Seahawks. And then Dan Quinn with the Commanders.
Thank you, Jay. Well, there's 3 in particular that I want to point out because although we could spend all our time talking about those 8 teams, there's really no other head coaches that have achieved something other than the head coaches of Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, and Mike Vrabel. So those are really the ones I want to point out. And I kind of want to go one by one, if you don't mind, kind of see where they're going, kind of see what they've been able to accomplish in their tenure as their team that they have just head coach for, and just see who has probably the best chances to be next in line to receive a head coach job. I know in my mind I have my answer. I'm kind of curious to see how you will answer it, and let's just get started. So let's start off with Bill Belichick, okay? This is a guy who is probably, and honestly, I don't think it's arguable, the greatest head coach of all time. We've seen what he was able to accomplish, of course, with Tom Brady, who we say is the greatest football player of all time, and it's just nothing short of greatness. I mean, the things that they were able to accomplish together, that Patriots dynasty, I mean, it lasted 20 years. 20 long years. It was very hard to watch 20 years of just dominance and greatness. And you got to leave room for other people at the end of the day. They were eating all the food. They were eating all the finger food and not leaving it for anybody else. It's like you go to a Super Bowl party and you don't have any wings when the game starts because somebody had already eaten all the wings before the game started. I mean, how would you feel about that, Jackson?
Top 10 worst feeling imaginable. That or someone ate like half a nacho like before kickoff. That like those 2 things, especially nachos for me, are like you got to save some throughout the entire game, and that person's getting kicked out the party ASAP.
They better be kicked out. But I have a couple things written down for Bill Belichick that I want to talk about. Of course, we know he's a 6-time Super Bowl champion and is a 3-time Coach of the Year. He won it in 2003, 2007, and 2010, which is honestly kind of weird for me to say that he never won a Coach of the Year after 2010. That's kind of strange. I feel like he would have won one, but he never did. So his tenure for the Patriots, because that's really what I want to focus on,
Mhm.
spanned from 2000 to 2023. He was the head coach, and he was really the de facto general manager. He was in charge of everything over there in New England. Am I right about that, Jackson?
Pretty much. It was basically, yeah, he was the de facto GM. They had like a few guys, like a Nick Casario, who's now the head GM with the Texans, who were in that front office. But basically, Bill and Robert Kraft had most of the final say on the roster.
Perfect. And I just want to point out some NFL records that I did not know this, and well, I knew a lot of them, but I mean it's pretty self-explanatory. He's got the most Super Bowl wins. He has the most Super Bowl, which he has 8, because he won 2 Super Bowls as an assistant coach with I think the Giants maybe.
I think it
Yeah,
might
the
have been
Giants.
when he
It
was
was
an
the Giants.
assistant with the Giants when they
Yeah.
had Lawrence Taylor and all those guys.
Mhm. So the Giants, and then he has the most Super Bowl wins as a head coach, of course. The most Super Bowl appearances at 12. The most Super Bowl appearances as a head coach at 9. Most playoff wins, most playoff appearances, which is tied, and then he has most divisional championships as a coach, which I don't think any coach is touching that right. As of right now, there's no coach touching that.
The only
If I off the
guy
top of my head.
The only guy I see coming close to that would be Mike Tomlin.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's fair, but like he's won what, one Super Bowl? Mike Tomlin has.
He has won 2. He won one in 2006 and then
Was he at Tampa Bay?
2010. No,
Was
that
he
was
with
both.
Tampa?
They were both with Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay. Was he not in Tampa Bay though with Tony when Tony Dungy was at Tampa Bay? They didn't win a Super Bowl then, did they?
No, Tampa
No, they
Bay
didn't.
won a Super Bowl when they had Gruden.
With Gruden. That's right. They won it with Gruden. That's perfect. Okay. So, as Bill Belichick's last season as head coach of the Patriots, which is by far his worst season, well, he went 4-13. So we saw that the Patriots had the number 3 pick in the NFL draft this past year, and Bill, it was just done. I mean, there's some times where you just wear a shirt for so long, you wear a pair of shoes for so long, and eventually they just become ragged and then out. They just become worn, and that was just the case in New England. They just kept wearing the Bill Belichick 76 shoes on for so long. And after 20 years, 23 years of Bill Belichick there, their shoes just fell apart. The sole literally fell out from the bottom of the shoe as they were walking. I mean, it was just done. It was just done. But realistically, do we see Bill Belichick in the future going for another head coaching job, or is Bill Belichick just done? Is he just done? I mean,
Uh
what more does he have to prove, Jackson? What more
no,
is there to prove?
he really doesn't have anything to prove. I think he is one of the obviously the greatest head coaches of all time. There's going to be that conversation with a Tom Landry. Want to throw him in there as well, who coached that Cowboys dynasty with Roger Staubach. Um, so many other guys that you just go come to mind. I would even say Bruce Arians is getting in a little bit of that conversation as one of the best head coaches of all time. But there's not much for Bill to prove. But I will say, I think he still has that itch to coach because he was in deep conversations with the Falcons to become their head coach this past cycle before they decided to go back to Raheem Morris. So I definitely think there's an avenue for him at some point because every year there's going to be a head coach that gets fired for one reason or another, and so there will be teams that are going to want to talk to Bill Belichick.
I mean, I agree. The Commanders were, I think, the last team to find a head coach, or one of the last teams, and everyone thought, oh, Bill Belichick's going to the NFC. Bill Belichick's going to the NFC. And they ended up hiring Dan Quinn, out of nowhere, 28-3 Dan Quinn, and who Bill Belichick ended up coming back at the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history against. I mean, and he's a lot younger than Bill Belichick. We have to put that into perspective. We can say, okay, Bill Belichick's he's won 6 times, been 9 times. I mean, we can say Bill Belichick has the best resume of any head coach out there. But we also have to put it in perspective as, okay, well, Dan Quinn's already been to a Super Bowl. He might have lost. He's a lot younger than Bill Belichick, but you obviously see his potential. You say, okay, he has the potential to go to a Super Bowl. He could win it if we have the right front office and everything. If all the cards are played right in Washington, of course. So that's just what it was at the end of the day. That's how I feel about it. Honestly, I feel like Bill Belichick's done. I mean, there's nothing more he can prove. He's just old now. And people are saying without Tom Brady, he's a fraud.
Okay. I see the argument with that. Like I could see the argument that he's done, that he'll retire, he'll go to broadcasting, and he'll just be done. The only thing is with him saying he's a fraud without Tom Brady is like, okay, it was one. Okay. Oh, right. That first Steelers Super Bowl I was thinking of was when they still had Bill Cowher as their head coach. That's the one I got mixed up with.
I thought Tampa Bay. He was with Tampa Bay.
Okay. But the thing is, it's not like he went from the greatest quarterback of all time to like Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr or Ryan Tannehill, like an average level quarterback. He went from one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time to a gaggle of like the worst quarterbacks ever. Like Mac Jones had his flash in the pan as a rookie and then made the Pro Bowl and then is now the backup to Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. Then he had Bailey Zappi, Jared Stidham, I think, was a quarterback in that mix at some point. So Cam Newton for 3 weeks. Like, give Bill Belichick Kirk Cousins and let's see what he can do. If he still doesn't like make the playoffs or has a winning record, yeah, I think let's see what happens then. But
Well, this is interesting because like we didn't even think of this. I mean, although if he's done, he's retired, right? But no, Bill Belichick has not officially retired yet. It hasn't been set in stone. Obviously, people are still. I mean, I think it's just a waiting game. We have more head coaches to talk about it, but Bill Belichick obviously has the most on his resume, and he might be done. He might not, because although he has nothing to prove, right? But although I feel like he has nothing to prove, people still feel that way because we just talked about people think he's a fraud. So if Bill Belichick lets that get to his ego or get to his pride, he's going to be like, okay, am I really a fraud? Let's see what I can do with Jaden Daniels, for example. Someone like just a rookie, like a good rookie quarterback. I don't think Dan Quinn's going to be one and done in Washington, but that was just maybe he goes to Chicago. How much longer is Matt Eberflus going to be there? Because this is really, in my opinion, Matt Eberflus's. That's it. I mean, he does good here, he stays. He does bad, he's gone.
Yeah, I pretty much nail on the head. Yeah, have at the very least a winning record. Have to go 9-8 this year to keep his job.
Got a 25-year-old girlfriend. He's trying to do some damage in the NFL.
Oh my god.
That's funny. Okay, well, enough about Bill Belichick. I don't want to spend the whole time talking about him because I want to talk about Pete Carroll too. I'm going to talk about Pete Carroll, Mike Vrabel. I just went from the highest resume to the lowest just to see how it would turn out because Mike Vrabel is actually an interesting one. So let's go to Pete Carroll first. We obviously know he's beaten Belichick before. It's a one-time Super Bowl win. That was against the Denver Broncos. I'm sorry, wasn't it? Yeah, that was against the Broncos. He lost against Belichick because they didn't run it on the 2-yard line. Well, what's interesting, although he He's never won a Coach of the Year. He's had one Super Bowl. Pete Carroll is one of the few head coaches who have won a national championship and a Super Bowl. So he's got 2 national championships on his belt in college, and his tenure for the Seahawks went from 2010 to 2023. So although he didn't spend a lot of time in the NFL like Belichick, Bill Belichick's career was exclusively in the NFL. Pete Carroll has accolades outside of it to prove that, hey, I'm a good head coach with high school recruits and college drafted players. So it's interesting to see how he can keep progressing players up and up and up to the next levels. The last season, which is actually the best season of the 3 teams for the Seahawks last year, was 9-8, and they were on the verge of making the playoffs. They just thought, hey, this tenure for Pete Carroll's over. I mean, honestly, Pete Carroll is in the front office of Seattle now. So I honestly, although Bill Belichick doesn't have a job right now, other than his 25-year-old girlfriend, Pete Carroll is accepted a job as in the front office of Seattle this next coming year. Is that something that could mess up his chances of having another head coach position, or do you just say he sticks in the front office of Seattle, stays where he's been all these years, and no beef or tough love there?
The only thing I could see it potentially doing is like, depending, I don't know the exact ins and outs of it, but I know for certain circumstances, you have to get permission to interview some people. Like I know for coordinators, I think the Commanders had to get permission from the Lions to interview their offensive coordinator for the head coaching job. So I'm not sure how exactly that would work with Pete, but he's in his mid 70s at this point, Pete Carroll. And not to say that he can't do the job, but I think he's going to just keep trying to move up into the Seattle's front office, be an advisor, helping player development. Not necessarily be a scout, but help the scouts with trying to draft and get players. So I think it's good for him to take this sort of step back, and I think he's done. I think he has firmly cemented himself as a Seattle Seahawks legend, easily the best coach in franchise history, and would have had 2 Super Bowls if he and an offensive coordinator would have had 2 brain cells and didn't share just one. So I think he's done.
I agree. I think Pete Carroll's older than Bill Belichick. Is he?
I don't know. Let me double check this. Hold on. Jackson research time. Let's see.
You said mid-70s. Belichick 72.
Pete Carroll's 72.
Okay, well they're the same.
He'll be 73 this September.
Oh, okay. Well then Belichick was born in 52. Pete Carroll was born in 51. So Pete Carroll has see.
Okay.
Pete Carroll's the oldest coach in the league. Pete Carroll can bench press 215, squat 380. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I don't know if that's true, but if Pete Carroll can do that at 72, I need what he's taking. But obviously, we've seen somebody like Pete Carroll produce someone like Russell Wilson, who hasn't had the greatest time in the past year. I think player development would be right up his alley if he were to go into something like that in the Seahawks. We've already said he's done. There's just not much to say about Pete Carroll anymore. But this last coach is very interesting because Mike Vrabel is young coach. He's up and coming. He was a player and a very good one at that, because as a player, he's won 3 Super Bowls with I think all with the Patriots.
Yes,
he was a Patriots linebacker. And then in 2007, he won a first-team All-Pro. So we know that in 2007, Mike Vrabel was the best linebacker, at least probably in the league, but at least in his conference. They do it per conference, right? All pro?
All pro teams are total NFL.
Okay, it's total NFL. Okay, well then he probably was the best linebacker in the league then at the end 2007. But as a coach, there's not much to his resume as he was head coach of the Titans from 2018 to 2023. He won coach of the year in 2021. And what's interesting is, although he didn't have a Bill Belichick season, the Titans only won 6 games, 11 losses, and were last in the AFC South. So I honestly did not see this coming. I don't know if you did, but I don't think Mike Vrabel should have left Tennessee that year. Uh, I'm curious to see what you think, but I didn't think it was in for Vrabel. To see him get fired was just surprising, incredibly surprising.
You know, I think it was time for a fresh voice in that Titans locker room and to turn the page because you knew you weren't going to re-sign Derrick Henry. You already traded away AJ Brown essentially for DeAndre Hopkins at that point. I think it was just time for a new voice. And yes, they got him. He got him to an AFC championship game with Ryan Tannehill. You now have Will Levis as your quarterback instead of Ryan Tannehill. So I think it was just time to get a new and more offensively focused head coach. Not to say that the Titans' offenses were bad under Vrabel. They just could have been better for the most part. I mean, if Derrick Henry couldn't run the ball, the Titans' offense was screwed most weeks. So so I think he's in an interesting situation. I'm not totally surprised he got fired from Tennessee, but I could see him working out somewhere else where the offense is a little bit more established and he can raise up a defense that needs some help.
Well, I want to pick out a comment that I put up on the screen earlier because it's interesting. And Jack has pointed out that he thinks that he's going to get the Ohio State job, which, if that is true, Mike Vrabel is in Cleveland as of right now, so he did get his new job. He's in Cleveland as of right now. And if what you're saying is true, where he needs to go somewhere where it is offensively better than Tennessee, maybe going to college isn't the worst idea because Ohio State has been proven to be one of the more dominant offenses in college football. Why not go to something like that?
Yeah, a lot of guys can rehabilitate their value in the college ranks. It's not necessarily a proven track record. Guys can coach in college and move to the NFL. The two biggest were Jim Harbaugh and Pete Carroll from Stanford and USC. So I think if he can kind of turn around his resume, keep Ohio State to the excellence they have, if not even further, I could see him, if he does take that job in 3 or 4 years, coming back to the NFL.
Well, I mean, we can even take somebody like Matt Rule, for example. We have seen, it's Matt Rule, I think, yeah. We have seen Nebraska's dominance in the 90s for college football. Nebraska is not a small name in the college football, especially in the 90s. I mean, if you watched, I obviously wasn't alive, but if you know college football history, you know that Nebraska was one of the top teams. Well, Matt Rule is trying to get Nebraska back on top. He's trying to get the Cornhusker name back in people's mouths, and he's doing some very good recruiting in Nebraska. And although we saw, I mean, he was on with the Panthers, I remember, and it was bad. It was horrible years. But, I mean, Matt Rule didn't get the number 1 overall pick. So, he kind of left before then. He didn't really do as good of his job as they wanted him to. Went to college, and I think he's doing pretty well for himself in Nebraska. I'd have to look at Nebraska's records over the past years, but I know recruiting-wise, Nebraska got the number 1 quarterback in the nation. Recruiting-wise. So, I mean, maybe if Vrabel goes to Ohio State, people are like, okay, this is NFL head coach. We want to play for him. I feel like that was the same with Matt Rule. I mean, how else does Nebraska get the number 1 quarterback in the nation?
Right.
Other
No, you go ahead.
Oh, that I'm finished. That's what I was gonna say.
Oh,
Other than just Matt Rule's name, you know.
yeah. I was looking up on Nebraska's website. They went 5-7 this year in 2023. So this past season. So
What was the year
they did have
before
a
it?
couple of big wins. So yeah. So yes, and he also had Nebraska go undefeated in the month of October for the first time since 2001.
Okay, that's pretty good. I mean, five. I don't know how well they were the previous year, but 5 wins. That's how much State got this past year. So I'm not gonna say Nebraska was bad because if I say Nebraska's bad, then I'm calling my own college bad. So I can't do that.
All right, let's see. How did they
Hang the
do?
banner.
Hang that banner.
So
Let's see. Yeah, in 2022 they were 4-8, so they improved by
okay,
one game.
but he just got 2023 was his first year, right?
Yeah, so he's
Yeah,
entering his second year as head coach.
I thought so. And he signed like a Jackson left. Well, I think he signed like a 4-year deal. I can make sure.
That was
Oh,
weird.
there you are. Yeah, that was rude. I was just making sure. I was gonna ask you, do you know what contract did he sign like a 4-year deal to become Nebraska's head coach? Do you know?
Let's see. I don't know off the top of my head,
He
but
signed an 8-year, $74 million contract. Okay, there we go. 8 years in Nebraska. We're gonna see what Matt Rule does. I mean, if he doesn't do as well as other people think it is, he's gonna get fired, and they're gonna have a big buyout in Nebraska. But you just got the number one quarterback in the nation. They're gonna use him for sure, and hopefully, it's not a situation with old Spencer Rattler, who we're gonna talk about in a little bit.
Ooh,
But
all right.
although we talked about head coaches and how well these head coaches can do in the NFL, let's talk about someone who can do very good in the insurance world by the name Jeff Ritepney.
Here's to the grown-ups. Your car is now your office, stage, nursery. Shh, sorry. Erie Insurance offers products that lots of other companies don't. That's a big deal, and it's a good deal, too. And with Erie, you get your own independent agent, not a giant corporate call center or some online robot. You meet with a real person, like this.
Your local Erie agent is Building Block Insurance Group. Get a quote today at 704-464-4544.
Erie Insurance.
And when you call Jeff Ritepney at 704-464-4544, go ahead and ask him who he believes is the greatest head coach. In today's league, I don't want to talk about all time who he thinks the greatest head coach is now. And we didn't talk about a man like Andy Reid, but Andy Reid's name is on there a couple times, I feel like. So, enough with head coaches. Let's go into another transition. And usually it's swim with the Loch Ness, but Nate's not here, and he didn't bring his pool floaties because Nate can't swim. We're going to go to a segment I like to call Unlocking Answers because it's not the most creative name. But in the Loch Ness segment, I do ask Naden a question, and he does get to answer it. So we're going to do the same exact thing on this segment. And today I have a lot written down for this, but it's going to be a brief segment because I want to get into the last segment quick. But I have a lot written down for this because it's just something that Nate would obviously want to talk about, but I'm not going to wait a week to talk about it because it's going to be irrelevant. So, Cameron Sutton. I don't know if you've ever heard the name before. I know you have. You're in the football world, but I was just trying to be coy. So, Cameron Sutton is now a Steelers cornerback who he spent the first 6 seasons of his career with. He did sign in 2023 a 3-year deal with the Lions worth up to $33 million, which we know now that he is a Steelers cornerback. So what happened? If he was supposed to spend 3 years in Detroit, why is he now in Pittsburgh? So Cameron Sutton was suspended 8 games of this coming up season for violating the NFL's personal conduct policy. And he's set to return week 10 against the Commanders because week 9's a bye week, so you can't really return to a game when there's no game. So week 10 is when the first game he'll be able to return. And the policy he violated was he had a domestic violence case, and he turned himself in to the police department, and when he did so, he was served with a misdemeanor battery offense after turning himself in, of course. So, in 2023, after he had signed that deal, it wasn't long before the Lions had released him. So, this was when he was with the Lions. He signed the contract. Ink was there, got released because he violated the policy. Didn't get the money he signed off to be. Poor little Cameron Sutton. I mean, but last month he did end up kind of avenging his reputation and signing a one-year deal with the Steelers for the 2024-2025 season. And my question is, Jack, I will ask this to you, and you can answer it with the best of your ability, and I will go off of it as best I can. What does it look like for a team to keep players like Cameron Sutton? Say the Lions would have kept him. What does it look like for a team to keep these players who have violated the NFL's personal conduct policy?
Well, in this specific circumstance, it's probably for the best that the Lions cut bait. I mean, they were able to trade for Carlton Davis this past offseason. They drafted 2 corners in this year's draft. So I don't think they're going to be messing with him. And if you want to look at it cynically, it's a good PR move to cut a guy who beat and hit a woman, if you want to look at it that way. But I don't know what it is with the Steelers and wanting to keep a guys around who like to make trouble or aren't the most focused guys in the world. Because you had Antonio Brown with all his nonsense before he finally got traded and then cut by the Raiders. And then you had, oh gosh, who else was there? There's Le'Veon Bell and his stuff that was going on, a whole bunch of weird stuff. Then you had Ben Roethlisberger. I think potentially he raped a woman. Like,
oh, wow.
The Steelers just seem to be the place for criminals at this point. So it's not that much of a hit to their reputation because people already think like, oh, this is where the football degenerates go to play when no one else wants to give them a contract. So it's unfortunately not surprising. And we know by now in the NFL, if you still have any modicum of talent, they will give you second, third, fourth, and fifth chances. So unfortunately, it's not very surprising at this point, and it sucks to see because there are guys, Deshaun Watson, who should not be playing football. But hey, let's give him the largest guaranteed contract in NFL history. Why don't we?
Well, obviously those situations are different. One has been proven and one has had served and has had his case sentenced, and the other has not had any conclusion for his case. So obviously the NFL looks at it as, okay, well, Deshaun Watson technically hasn't violated the policy because there wasn't a conclusion to his case, but because of the, like you said, the PR for everything, they did have to suspend Deshaun Watson for everything that went on, which, I mean, just had to happen whenever that stuff goes on. I liked it. I'm pro, like, Clemson, so, like, to see that happen was kind of hard because I remember Deshaun Watson winning Clemson's first national championship in 30 years, like almost 10 years ago, which is crazy. But whatever happens. It's interesting because Ben Roethlisberger, you're not going to cut somebody that obviously makes the most money for Pittsburgh. I mean, that's like having somebody I can't give a good or that's like having like Eli Manning cut from the Giants or something. That'd probably be. I was gonna say someone like Tom Brady, but it wouldn't be a fair comparison. But like Eli
Mhm.
Manning, if we were to cut Eli Manning from the Giants, of course they
Philip
wouldn't do
Rivers from the
that.
Chargers.
Or Phillip Rivers on the Chargers. Thank you. If we were to cut any of those guys from those teams, those guys probably had the highest jersey sales of any player. Probably not Phillip Rivers in like 2006 or something, or 2007 or 8, or whenever the Chargers were like really good. But the rest of the guys, they had the highest jersey sales. They were obviously the money makers. New York, Pittsburgh, and San Diego at the time were putting their money into their quarterbacks, just like every other team was. So to cut somebody like that would just be a stupid business move, because although they do violate the policy, you have to look at it as a business standpoint and say, hey, this guy makes the most money for us. We invest money in him to play for us. To cut him would simply just not be smart number-wise. Although I'm not saying it's right, just NFL teams
Mhm.
aren't going to do it because it's not smart in a business sense.
Oh yeah,
That's
no,
what
I'm not saying like that it would ever happen, or that it makes like a ton of sense from that perspective. But yeah, no, I was just trying to pull that comparison. I mean, even the Baltimore Ravens, they kept Ray Rice around until I think after that video surfaced of him beating his fiance, and then they kept Ray Lewis around, who allegedly killed somebody. So, like, again, as long as you're talented, as long as you're good, as long as you're making a ton of money, the NFL is going to give you second and third chances and just kind of sweep it under the rug. Does it make it right? No, but it's just the reality of the situation in the world we live in.
Exactly, and even Jack's right. Like Tyreek Hill, this comment right here, he's about to get another extension where he's going to make 30-something million a year, and it's because although these guys break policies, if you can play football, you can play football. And if you're playing in the NFL, you're going to get paid because you know how to play football better than everybody else on the field. If you're Tyreek Hill, who is the greatest wide receiver right now, other than probably Justin Jefferson, either him or Justin Jefferson, you're going to get paid whether or not you burn down an orphanage or you punt a dog in a tree. I mean, either or, you're still going to get paid whether or not it surfaces. And neither of those, well, probably burning the orphanage down is probably as bad as like beating your girl or something. That is just, that has a bad taste in my mouth when I see stuff like that. I mean, it's just like disrespectful, and I hate to see people do it, and I hate to see like that happen where they're able to sign $33 million a year contracts even though they've had that happen. Cameron Sutton is no Tyreek Hill. Let's get that straight. And I think there was a guy on the Eagles not like last week or 2 weeks ago that got released for like smoking marijuana, or it was like drugs or something. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know what I'm like?
Not off
He
the
was a
top of my
practice squad.
head.
He was just on the practice squad.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs have cut like 3 or 4 guys who were involved in legal issues who were like 4th and 5th stringers, but
That's
they're
probably
keeping Rashee Rice around because he's good.
because he's good. Exactly. Even though he went 120, he did another Henry Ruggs incident. It was just Henry Ruggs the second. He's still on the Chiefs, and although Henry Ruggs was good, he's still on the Chiefs because he knows how to play football. And that's just how it is. And that you can't do anything about it because the NFL is a business, it's politics, and they're not going to cut people who are good for business.
Yep. Perfectly said.
But, Jackson, I wanted to keep that brief because I have so much to talk about for the next segment. You have no idea. So, let's get into it. I don't know if you've heard the segment name before, and I think you have, but I don't know if you remember it because, Jackson, I'm getting a little hungry. Usually at the end of the show, we like to get a little messy with Nate Nessie, but today, we're eating a little gravy with C. Davy because I'm a little hungry, okay? So that's what we're going to be doing, and I put this jersey on for a reason. The reason I'm wearing this nice little Jabbo jersey where we just eat a bunch of W's every day, we're going to talk about
Desert.
who is the next Drew Brees in New Orleans. Who's going to be greatness for that city in these next couple of years? Are we seeing them now? Are we yet to see them? Like, is it a person that has not come to New Orleans yet? I'm interesting to talk about. I mean, I got a lot of stuff written down here, and right now, my opinion is, and no, I don't know, but we're about to see if it's as good as your gravy. But right now, my opinion is Derek Carr is not the answer for New Orleans. Let's be for real. He's not the answer. I can't stand emotional signings, which is what the Saints always do. We sign somebody because they're from New Orleans. Oh my gosh, they grew up down the street from the Super Bowl. If they can't play football, don't put cleats on their feet and put them on the field. I don't want to see them. I don't care if you grew up down the road from walk-ons. I don't care. If you can't play football, don't step foot in the Superdome. I'm sorry, but you know who the head coach of New Orleans is, Dennis Allen, and he had to get Derek Carr in New Orleans after Derek Carr had a dead end in Las Vegas in the Raiders. But I have some interesting numbers to pull for you, Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
We saw in 2022, before Derek Carr, Andy Dalton was the quarterback, which was hard to see. It was very hard to watch. But I'm going to pull some numbers for you, and you're going to it's going to like give you a whole nother different viewpoint on business, on money, on how you see the world better than you already do, or how you see New Orleans, because it's uncanny how similar these statistics are between Derek Carr and Andy Dalton. So in the first 14 games that Andy Dalton and Derek Carr played, I'm going to give you the quarterback statistics for the two, and it's going to be shocking. Because everybody's saying, oh, Andy Dalton, he's awful. But Derek Carr's our savior. He's the guy that's going to bring New Orleans back to the top. No, he's not. Because look at these numbers. Last year, in Derek Carr's first 14 games, he threw for 3,098 passing yards. He had a 68.8% completion percentage, 16 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He was sacked 26 times, and he signed a 4-year, $150 million deal in 2023. So he's going to be there a while, and if we decide to cut him, we're going to get a pretty big dead penalty cap hit. It's not going to look good. But with all those numbers, this is Andy Dalton's first 14 games in New Orleans. So we said Derek Carr had about 3,000. Andy Dalton had 2,871 yards passing. He had a 66.7% completion percentage. He had 18 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, which the ratio isn't as good as Derek Carr's, but he threw for more touchdowns. And then he was sacked 25 times. But get this. He did not come back to New Orleans because what, Jackson? He signed a 1-year, $6 million deal to be in New Orleans. Derek Carr's not getting paid $6 million a year to throw the football. He's not. And the reason he hasn't left New Orleans is because he gets paid north of $35 million a year. Which is, I don't know why they did that. Because they do emotional stuff. That's my only explanation for it. The Saints are emotional signings. We sign people because they grew up down the road. I don't want to see Wash Jarvis Landry catching the football and getting injured 5 weeks into the season. I don't want to see that. I want to see football that's meant to be played. I want to see 500-yard passing games like I grew up watching with Drew Brees. I want to see that again in New Orleans. I was so spoiled growing up and watching Drew Brees on my TV that I forgot just how bad football can actually be in New Orleans. Jackson, is there anything you'd like to say about these two people that I just gave you? I mean, the statistics, the comparison, it's uncanny.
Yeah, as someone who had to endure a partial season of Andy Dalton here in Chicago when Justin Fields was a rookie, I feel your pain because Andy Dalton's the definition of a guy at this point in his career who's a backup. He used to be a Pro Bowler when he was with the Bengals, but he's not that guy anymore. So I feel your pain. But yeah, I think it's not obviously the same situation as like you were talking about, where like it's a emotional decision where like Derek Carr grew up in California, but I think it was just a move more so rather than out of emotion, out of desperation, because Cam Jordan's getting older. A lot of pieces on that defense are getting older. They signed Tyrann Mathieu back after his time in Kansas City and Houston. Um, they're just trying to find one like big swing of glory with this team. So it's yeah, so they messed up, and there already enough cap crunch as it is. Yeah, I agree that Derek Carr, he's a fine quarterback, but he's not. He is a floor raiser. He is not a like ceiling raiser, if that makes any sense. If you're a 4-win team, he'll get you to be a 6 or 7-win team. He's not going to raise you to an 8 to 10-win team if you get him. You need the right infrastructure in place. He's as we like to say, he is a very mid quarterback. He's not bad, but he's also not good.
I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, and he did a lot better the second half of the season. I will give him that. But I mean, you just said they signed Tyrann Mathieu. And Tyrann Mathieu's been pretty decent. I'm not going to lie. He's been pretty nice to watch in New Orleans. He hasn't been a Malcolm Jenkins. He hasn't been like a Tracy Porter or anything like we've seen in the past. But, I mean, he went to LSU. Oh, we're going to sign somebody who went to LSU. Like Jarvis Landry. Oh, we went to LSU. We're going to sign him. He went to LSU. You know, we have a lot of Mississippi State people on our team that we signed because I want to say they went to state. But honestly, Jonathan Abram, we signed to the practice squad. He turned out to be really good. Went to state. I mean, we signed him for another season. He should stay on the team. We signed Willie Gay. Won a couple Super Bowls in Kansas City as a starting linebacker. I mean, sometimes the emotional buyings can work. And I sound so biased because those guys are from Mississippi State. And sometimes the emotional buyings can work, like Tyrann Mathieu, for example. But I don't want that to be the case, that if you have player A and player B, and one went to Alabama and one went to LSU, and you signed the one from LSU because he played in Louisiana, but he obviously has a worse resume than player A, I can't stand that. I can't stand that. They're using their cap horribly. Mickey Loomis needs to just get out of New Orleans. It's not 2006 anymore where you won, or whenever the year you won Executive of the Year. It's not pre-2010. You had your time, Mickey Loomis. The soles of my feet have already fell down off of my shoe like Bill Belichick in New England. My heels of my feet are touching the bare concrete, and I have no sole or no protection on my feet with Mickey Loomis still in New Orleans. He just got to go. He just got to go. And let me see Jack Gaffney's comment, because I just can't stand it anymore.
Yep.
He deserves to never see the sunlight again for the transgressions against our beloved salary cap. You know, I bet you Mickey Loomis is one of the reasons we got like an 80 million plus salary cap bonus for each team. Do you know what I'm talking about? They got like they raised the salary cap to like $80 million more or something. I can't remember what
that's
usually was.
Yeah, that's usually typically with like a collective bargaining agreement and based on like the revenue of the league. And so that they have like projections for how much the salary cap will grow, and then based on a couple of different things. The best example is like back in 2016 with the NBA, they had an option to like slowly raise the salary cap with the new like TV deal that they had, but instead they just dropped it like all in one big bucket in that off season. So maybe that's kind of similar to what's happened this year of why the salary cap jumped up so much. But yeah, no, I was just taking a look at it. The Saints have the 10th highest dead cap space at $41.5 million to guys that are not on their team that they're paying.
Exactly. And it oh my gosh, it makes me so angry. It just I just think I could do a better job than Mickey Loomis. Honestly. At this point, And I have no experience, right? But that's just how I feel. Emotionally, I feel like I could do it. And Jack Gaffney's right. He needs to be arrested, and then that he could do a better job. And I believe you could, Jack. But if we have not seen the next Drew Brees in New Orleans now, what about if we're going to see them in the future? Let me pull out somebody. Spencer Rattler is a 5th-round draft pick of the 2024 NFL Draft by the New Orleans Saints, which I believed was a steal. Now, he has broken every single quarterback record you could think of for the state of Arizona in high school. There is probably nothing left to be broken because Spencer Rattler has just about broken all of them, if not all of them. Now, as a senior in high school, he did star in a Netflix series called QB1 Beyond the Lights. I don't know if you saw that, but it kind of had him in a negative light. He was this cocky, arrogant. He was the number 1 recruit coming out of high school. Obviously, you're going to feel some type of way about yourself, like, oh, I'm the best there ever was, the best there ever is, and the best there ever will be. But he goes to Oklahoma for 3 seasons, ends up not being the next Patrick Mahomes like everybody else does, has a reality check. He says, okay, I get a second chance. We have something called the transfer portal and NIL now. He goes to the SEC. He goes to play for South Carolina and does pretty decent. And here, I feel like, is where Spencer Rattler learned not to be a quarterback, but to be a humble player. And that's really a lot. If you look at Tom Brady or Drew Brees, you don't ever think of those guys as puffing their chest out saying, oh, I'm the greatest quarterback of all time. No. Yeah, but Spencer Rattler was that way coming out of high school and going into college. I'm the number 1 recruit in the nation. You could even watch the Beyond the Lights documentary. I'm the number 1 recruit in the nation, and you could just feel it. You could see it. But when he went to South Carolina, you could say, hey, he obviously had a reality check. His ego was hit. His pride was hit. This is a different player. This is a different person. This is a different Spencer Rattler. So, in my eyes, I would love to see Spencer Rattler get a chance. We saw him at the Senior Bowl. He ended up losing the Senior Bowl, but guess what? Still got Senior Bowl MVP, which was interesting. I mean, you're even wearing the hat right now, Jackson. Obviously, You remember him. Is this going to be, obviously saying he's going to be the next Drew Brees is a big, big comparison. It's hard to reach that level and will be hard to reach that level, but can Spencer Rattler achieve greatness in New Orleans, Jackson?
That is tough to say because we don't know when he's going to get his chance. I believe he was a 2nd or 3rd round pick in this past draft. I think you mentioned that.
5th round.
5th rounder. Okay,
so that's I got him for a steal.
Yeah, so that's going to be tough. If he ever gets the opportunity, I think he could have some success. But I also think there's a reason he was a 5th round pick. I mean, we were surprised a few years ago when Desmond Ridder and Malik Willis fell in. I think that was the 2022 NFL draft. We were surprised those guys fell so far. And then we saw why. Desmond Ridder's now the backup in Arizona to Kyler Murray. Malik Willis is the 3rd-string quarterback in Tennessee.
Is he still in
Matt
Tennessee?
Corral is, I believe so. And Matt Corral's not even on the Panthers anymore.
He's not even in the NFL.
Exactly.
He's in the UFL.
Exactly. So I caution against comparing him to Drew Brees or a Tom Brady just based on the draft position. I think he could grow into, I would say, a prime Derek Carr, when the Raiders were still in Oakland. Kirk Cousins, his last couple of years with the Vikings. I think he could be that. A guy who can win you a few games, but I don't know if he's going to ever throw for 5,000 yards like Drew Brees did. It takes a special type of talent and the right coaching. I mean, Drew Brees had Sean Payton that entire time. Tom Brady, for a lot of his successful years, he had Josh McDaniels whispering in his ear, which dog him all you want as a head coach and human being, but he's a damn good offensive coordinator. more times than not. So, and right now with Dennis Allen head coach, I have no belief that Spencer Rattler is going to do that well. And then the supporting cast has to improve. I mean, right now it's really just Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara. The offensive line looks solid. Talise Fuaga is the new left tackle. Looks pretty interesting to replace Teron Armstead. But it's going to, if sooner rather than later, New Orleans is going to go through a full rebuild. And it'll be some time before we know if Spencer Rattler, or if they're bad enough, maybe a Quinn Ewers will be the next guy for New Orleans at quarterback.
Do you know the last time New Orleans picked a quarterback in the first round?
Well, I'm assuming it's before the Drew Brees era, so I'm going to assume like 1999 or something.
No, I don't. I don't even know the answer to that question, but I know for a fact it's before the 90s. It's got to be like in the 70s or 80s. I mean, you could do a little research right now, but the Saints are not known for drafting quarterbacks in the first round. Even though we could say Drew Brees is the greatest quarterback in franchise history, which he is, why were they not drafting them before Drew Brees or before Archie Manning, or maybe it was between Archie Manning and Drew Brees, but like they just never were a team to draft in the first round quarterback wise. I don't know why. I can't answer that question. I've been alive long enough to know that question. If somebody knows, please let me know. It's just, it never has been their biggest need, I guess, in the draft. Do you have the answer to that question pulled up, Jackson?
The only quarterback the New Orleans Saints have ever drafted in the first round is Archie Manning at number 2 in 1971.
That's what I thought. I thought Archie Manning was the last quarterback we drafted.
The only.
And that's crazy. Oh, and the only. I didn't know he was the only, but that's insane. Because the thing about it is, like, Archie Manning really had to work too. I mean, that dude was running for his life. Nobody wanted to block for him. And I felt bad. And I hope that's not the case now, where nobody wants to block, because that O-line looks rough. That O-line looks rough. But we're going to fix it. We're going to fix it. And I'm just getting a little full. And I think we just had enough gravy today, Jackson. Unless you want to add something else. I think we've just had a little bit too much gravy.
My belly is full right now on that gravy.
Okay, good. Because now, as we always say on the breakdown, let's channel our inner Ricky Williams, who will eventually come on the show. Please, Ricky Williams, if you're listening, come on the show. And let me come on. There we go. Now, Jackson, although you are new to this show, it doesn't change how the segments wear out. Because at the end of the show, we like to end on a high note and then start the week on the high note for the rest of the week. So I would like to introduce, it stays, the rest of the segments change, but this one stays the same. It's new week, new chapter. And usually Nate comes on here and I let him take the floor, and he takes, scripture, and he says, hey, this is what I believe, this is what's going to happen, this is what we can learn from, and it's good to hear. But every once in a while, when I feel like I need to take charge and want to do the segment myself, I do. And today, because Nate is not here, that is one of those days where I need to take charge in the segment. And I'm not afraid to. I'm not scared to. So I want to pull up the scripture for today. And I'm not going to have it on too long. I'm going to put it as at the bottom of your screen so you can see it too. And the scripture I chose today is Hebrews 11, chapter 11, verse 1. And it says, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Now, what does that mean? What is it telling us that faith is? Now, obviously, we can say faith, there's a clear definition. We could look in the dictionary and say, okay, well, faith is X, Y, and Z. This is what faith means. But in our religious faith, and what this is telling us to say is, hey, faith is all of our things that we hope for. And to have faith, we need to believe in the things not seen. We need to know the things not seen. And for that, obviously, we can say, hey, I personally haven't seen God. I personally haven't seen Jesus. But in reality, we have. I mean, if we look outside or we look in the sky, we're like, okay, well, somebody had to make those trees. Somebody had to plant the seed. Somebody had to make the fruit. And something had to happen for us to see what we are seeing outside, because it doesn't just happen like that. Now, it's interesting because I like to look at the verses I have. I have a Bible app, and I like to highlight certain things. And to pick the verse is very difficult because obviously I have to sort of preach and say why I picked this verse. And it's interesting because the first time I ever heard this verse, I had joined a Christian fraternity here at Mississippi State up in Starkville, Mississippi, and we had to have kind of interviews with each of the people in order to be initiated in the frat. Although I dropped before I was initiated because it just wasn't what I wanted. No hate to those guys. I had a conversation with a guy named Johnny, and he showed me this verse. And I got to thinking, I was like, well, what does he mean by this? What can I take from this? And it opened a bag of worms. It opened a religious bag of worms, something that you are not going to be able to put back together. Because what I get from this, and recently I've had a lot of trouble, and I've listened to I sometimes like to listen to preaching when I go to sleep most of the time, and I like to sit there and just close my eyes and just listen to what I'm being told. And recently I've heard, hey, I need to sharpen my sword, or I need to strengthen my strength. I need to although I have my sword, I have my faith, I'm strong in it, there's just things I still need to improve on. I like to say that I'm a pretty religious person. I like to say that I'm a pretty faithful person, but I'm not perfect. And the other day I was talking to a lady I served a lady at the restaurant Monday, and I was talking to her, and it was just interesting because she was my only table for like an hour and a half, and something just told me to go and talk to her. And I told her something, and she told me like she'd been having a bad time. In the past year, she had a divorce and yada yada yada. And I told her, it's like people like to live on this earth and say, hey, there's nothing to live for. And I told her, I was like, well, we live every day for God. There is something to live for on this earth. And I said, look, a lot of people like to say if they can't do something, or they can't get better in something, or they can't be perfect in that thing, they're going to give up. And I remember listening to a homily one day in Mass, and the priest looks at everybody and he goes, to be perfect, the essence of being perfect, if me or you were perfect, it would be impossible. There is no possibility that me or you could be perfect. There's just no chance, because there's only one perfect person that's ever lived on this earth. His name's Jesus Christ, just as the Bible tells us. But he looks at everybody, pauses for a second, and says, to strive for perfection, to strive to be Jesus, that is not impossible. To strive to be like him. If we were to strive for perfection, if I were to strive to be the best I can be, to be like Jesus, there's nothing impossible in that statement. I mean, to live like him, to live the life he lived on earth, it'd be difficult. It'd be extremely hard, but it wouldn't be impossible. And I sat there and I looked at her, and we kept talking, and we talked about our paths, and there's just things that I'm worried about growing up, and it's like, well, what do I want to do when I get out of college, or what do I want to do in college? And there's a lot of questions I asked myself, and she said, look, you got to breathe. I looked at her and I said, okay. She said, we're all driving the car, we're all behind the wheel, and wherever you turn is up to you. But the GPS tells you where to go. I looked at her and I said, well, you're right. And we could really say that the G in GPS stands for God. I said, I might be in the car, right? I might be in the car. And I told her, I said, I'm trying to get to my purpose, to God's plan, what he has planned for me the fastest. I'm trying to get there as fast as I possibly can. But the only person that can ruin us from getting to our purpose is ourselves. It's not God. God doesn't ruin us. He's got a plan for us, but the only person that can ruin it is us. I mean, I could get behind the wheel and press the acceleration to press gas the whole way there. But to do that would be perfect. I would have to be a perfect person. But as I look at that GPS, as I look down at my phone and I hear the directions getting yelled at me, I sometimes press the brakes. I sometimes fall short. And as humans, we all fall short. We all fall short of the glory of God. I remember sitting by the recliner of my grandfather. He said, look, Connor, we all fall short. None of us are perfect. It doesn't matter if you have one doctrine. It doesn't matter if you have two doctrines. You don't have anything if you don't have a little bit of wisdom. And to have wisdom means you receive it from God. There's only one way to receive it, and that's from God. So Jackson, as I worry about my path, I can sit behind the wheel, and sometimes I pray that I'm not ruining my purpose, and I strive every day not to ruin the purpose. And at the end of each New Week, New Chapter segment, Nate likes to end it with the prayer, but today Nate's not here, and if you don't mind, I would love to finish this segment off in the prayer, end it on a high note, just like we started, and we can call it a day after that.
Yeah, go for it.
Ready? Perfect, if you don't mind. Dear Lord, I want to thank you for letting us have another special episode of this show and giving us the opportunity to come on here. And although Nate couldn't make it, I thank you for giving me somebody who can, for giving me somebody that's knowledgeable and knows what they're talking about, and to just can be a genuinely good person and have fun with me tonight. Lord, I pray that you help me and help us not to ruin our purpose for the plan that you have for us, for the path that you lay down in front of us. Because when there's road work going on the road and we're behind the wheel, there's always going to be a detour. You're always going to detour us where we need to go and eventually lead up and end up to our destination, the purpose, the path that you have for us, Lord. For me to get there, sometimes I press the brake, sometimes I press the acceleration, but I pray, Lord, that you help me almost always press the gas, almost always press the acceleration, because I never ever want to press the brakes. And if I do, I apologize. Help me from pressing the brakes, Lord, as I'm behind that wheel. I pray that you help us get to our paths. Help us not ruin our purpose, Lord, because at the end of the day, it's only you that we need to see. At the end of our destination, it's going to be you. I pray that you help us spend the rest of eternity, spend the rest of our lives with you, Lord. And so one day that when we hopefully inevitably see you, Lord, it's going to be worth it. I pray that you look over us for that rest of the week. And until next week, in your Son's perfect, holy, and precious name, I pray. Amen. Thank you, Jackson, for coming on here. I really appreciate it. To not have Nate here is, it's difficult to find somebody that can obviously fill the shoes of somebody that was in the NFL for 5 years. It's difficult. I get it. I mean, the first time we did it, we were in the Senior Bowl, and I really enjoyed the episode with MJ. But unfortunately, MJ couldn't make it again. I kind of like to keep continuity, and although I couldn't keep that continuity, I do appreciate you coming out here. It was good. You're really knowledgeable. I love listening to you. I even though I don't know baseball, if you look down at the ticker right below, that's Jackson's show every Monday. Usually he's Beer versus Ivy. If you want to go listen to it and you have enjoyed what you've heard with Jackson tonight, I know I have, and you like baseball, go check out Beer versus Ivy. It's at Monday. Is it at 12, Jackson, or have y'all changed the time, or is it just whenever on Monday?
It's still 12 o'clock Central Time every Monday.
Every Monday. And then, although I don't know baseball, Jack, like I said, I do like to sit there and listen to y'all because I like to listen to knowledgeable people, and which is why I liked to listen to my grandfather talk all those years about religion and stuff. But Jackson, before we end this special episode, I know we've gone a little bit past time. Is there anything you would like to say, shout out, anything at all you'd like to leave the viewers while we still have people watching before I press end stream and we call it a night?
I would just like to say thank you for having me on and entrusting me to fill the shoes of the great Nate Ness. I know it might be surprising. I am not a 5-year NFL veteran, even though I have the physique of one. No, I'm just kidding. Um, but no, I it's been a while since I've talked some football, so I appreciate you having me on. I always have a good time with you, joking around and just having fun talking some sports, man. So I appreciate that. And quick little promo for us here at TDT. If you love all our football stuff, we have a lot of NFL hot takes coming out. Jack Gaffney has one for New England Patriots coming out soon. Our guy Cy Ingersoll is going to have one for the 49ers. Got one already out for the Houston Texans and New York Giants. So if you can't get enough of football, head on over to thirddownthursdays.com. Go get some reading. Go get your favorite snack and your favorite drink and just spend all day reading our articles. And once again, thank you so much for having me on, Connor. It was an absolute
Yes. Yes. Again, check out ThirdDownThursdays.com. Jackson's one of the main guys who sits down and edits all those articles because I know I couldn't do that. And no, I mean, thanks for coming on, man. It was fun. You're probably going to be my go-to when Nate's not here, so just be available, be on the lookout because if next Tuesday Nate's not here, which I doubt it, if next Tuesday Nate's not here, you know you're going to get a call from a Mississippi number, and it's going to be me on the other end. So be ready for that. Next week, don't leave us because we're not leaving you. We're going to be back 7 o'clock Central Time. Just like always, we never change. So that way you can keep it in your calendar every week and keep it posted. So I'm your co-host, Connor Davis. To my right is not the 5-year NFL vet. It is Jackson Gross of TDT. Until he comes back next time, I'll be here next week. This has been the Breakdown X's and O's with Connor Davis. It's good having y'all. We'll see you next time.